Oh wow, that's my reaction right now when it comes to Zebec. Even though ZBCN's not doing the best in terms of price, and even though nothing I say is financial advice, my perception comes from how recently I saw when it comes to the site, when it comes to Zebec, that it has finally achieved, in terms of compliance, ISO 20022. So I find that pretty fascinating. That's why I say, oh wow. Because for quite a while, Zebec wasn't really considered within this space. So yeah, sure, ZBCN is still around 34 and a half times lower than 10 cents, but actually, I think because of this sort of compliance that they recently achieved, I think now it kind of puts it as a contender against something like XDC. Because even though I think XDC is just way more popular than Zebec, even though it just has more notoriety, the thing is, for quite a while, the thing that made Zebec kind of not able to really compete with something like that is because of the lack of ISO 20022 in terms of the aspect of that within the project. But now, since it's able to have that, I feel like if, let's say, there is an altcoin season, I feel like now it could actually be a contender against something like that. Keep in mind, XDC is currently number three within the space of global trade and finance, within this space, in terms of popularity. It's behind Stellar. However, ZBCN and XCN, or should I say Zebec and Onyx, they've been historically kind of number four, number five as of late, right? But then now, I feel like if there is an altcoin season, Zebec could very well, again, just be somewhat considered, I think, in terms of the fundamentals, somewhat maybe on par with something like XDC. The thing is, when I made my previous video, everyone was saying, oh, it already happened when it comes to Zebec. But yeah, when I made the video, I didn't like see it at that time. But then again, I can't just automatically make a video and then upload it, right? Sometimes there's like a delay, but this one, I'm making it a little bit more recent. So yeah, next time I'll be sure to, uploaded earlier. But besides that point, I find this just pretty interesting overall because we have to consider, right? When it comes to ISO 20022, that is currently being used by many institutions throughout this world for something called inter-organizational data exchange, especially when it comes to like kind of the global trade and finance space, right? So I find this pretty cool. And it's often sometimes a prerequisite many people that at least I know seem to want to have, right? They want to see this prerequisite, be achieved before they really consider the project to be focused on global trade and finance, like sort of officially, but kind of unofficially, you know what I mean? It's just kind of like the vibe and sentiment. If it's able to do that, then they kind of consider it. But then now that Zebec's been able to do that, people may be thinking, okay, why is it not even as big as XDC? Well, it can't just happen like that. Also, on top of that, my perspective is that it's going to be pretty difficult to overtake something like XDC just because of its historical notoriety. But then also on top of that, we're not in an altcoin season. So I think that there's a lot of factors that make this kind of event not as kind of anticipated, I guess, not as sort of talked about, as opposed to, let's say, if this was during an altcoin season, it'd be a completely different case. And I'm not even talking about just only if it's an altcoin season in the most recent times. Like, even if this just happened, maybe arguably like 5 months ago or something like that, or just a couple months ago, it'd be a completely different case, right? In terms of the sentiment. But then as of right now, just because altcoins, generally speaking, have just been having this pretty big pullback, things that happen sometimes for projects, they're not really considered. Seeing this sort of ISO 20022 compliance when it comes to Zebec, it gives me a certain type of feeling, right? It makes me feel like some sort of way, I guess. The way I would describe it is this. When it comes to me personally, when I go to New York, more specifically New York City, I feel this type of energy. Like, I feel like New York City is so special in my perspective, just the energy, the vibe, everything like that. I would not say that when I go there, I feel sort of kind of nervous. I don't feel that way. How I feel is like kind of this just change in energy. I don't know how to explain it. And it's a good feeling too, I suppose, because it's just like when I see things going on, I'm like, oh, wow. Like, it looks so fascinating, right? Seeing all the buildings, seeing, just how things work like that. It's just that type of feeling. I don't know, how to describe that, but New York City, it gives me that vibe, like Manhattan, something like that. It gives me that sort of like, oh, wow, type of energy, I guess. And I kind of felt it a little bit when I saw that when it comes to Zebec in terms of ISO 20022. Now, keep in mind, though, they're still working towards FCA. But by the way, for the people out there that have been to New York, comment down below if you feel that way. If you know what I'm saying basically regarding that. But, that's besides that point. When I take a look at something like, again, Zebec, they're still working towards FCA, but really the thing is, when it comes to FCA, it's not as like kind of viewed as popular in the same regard as something like ISO. So yeah, when I take a look at something like Zebec, now it's kind of joined that unofficial sort of club, I would say, right, in terms of the projects that are focused on global trade and finance, but have that aspect of ISO 20022. I think it joins something like, for instance, in the case of Stellar, something like, XDC, something like that. So yeah, when I take a look at Zebec, I am pretty impressed in terms of what I'm seeing fundamentally, not in terms of the price, because it's not doing the best. Like in the past 24 hours, we saw around a 4% movement. It's really not like that impressive in the grand scheme of things. But besides that point, though, the way to take a look at it is that Zebec to me represents a project within this space that is a little bit more fun, because if we take a look at XDC, something like Stellar, it feels more like something that is more serious. It feels like it has that historical sort of presence, right? Where it's very like, within that space. But then when I take a look at something like Zebec, what I find, to me at least, to be pretty kind of interesting is that it feels a little bit cool. It feels a little bit unique. Now, I'm not telling anyone to do anything, but just because I take a look at the vibes of Solana, when I take a look at something like, again, the things they're doing with the Zebec cards and all this, when I take a look at, just kind of their take on payrolls, right? Them being focused on, AI-based pay-fi, something like that. It just feels like a little bit of a breath of fresh air, I guess, within this space. That's the way I view it. But even besides all that, though, when it comes to ZBCN, yeah, it's still not doing the best. But I still like the amount of holders. I mean, there's still over 88,000. Actually, as of right now, it's nearly 90,000. So yeah, I mean, it's gone up a little bit, right, in the past like month or so, I would say. But really nothing significant. But that's besides the point, right? I mean, we're not in an altcoin season, and the sentiment when it comes to altcoins are just not doing the best. But when it comes to Zebec, fundamentally, I think this could very well lay the groundwork for it moving forward, because now that it's kind of been able to achieve that sort of compliance, if let's say there's an altcoin season, if let's say the sentiment became better when it comes to altcoins, I think maybe this time around, or let's say like the next time around, if it hypothetically were to even happen, I think the sentiment when it comes to Zebec, sort of the energy that it kind of, portrays, right? I think it may be a little bit different when compared to back then. Back then, I saw ZBCN, well, it's not even that long ago, but I'm saying like, remember back in like May of this year, ZBCN had a market cap of around 500 million. Did it have ISO 20022 compliance at that time? Did it have, all these acquisitions that they did? Did it have kind of the notoriety in terms of their partnerships with something called Privy, which is part of Stripe? I hypothetically think probably not, right? And it was still able to do that without even an altcoin season. So my imagination is just like, what could it maybe hypothetically do if there was an altcoin season? That's just the way to take a look at it. But besides all that, though, when sometimes people like to ask me, am I still thinking about 10 cents? I am, but who knows if it could ever happen, but I'm still thinking about it nonetheless. Right now, we are around 34 and a half times lower than that, but I'm saying, even at the hypothetical idea 10 cents, market cap at that point, it would be around 7.7 billion. And it's not like such a outlandish figure in my perspective. But yeah, only time will tell. I'll have to wait and see if there's even going to be an altcoin season. Who knows if there's ever even going to be one in 2026. I don't think that we're going to see one like this year. I mean, we're almost entering into 2026. But even besides that point, I feel like, if anything, I'm just going to wait and see what happens in 2026. I'm a little bit curious. But yeah, that's besides the point. I just wanted to make this updated video to talk about how I feel when it comes to Zebec in regards to the recent sort of ISO update that I saw, I guess. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one. It's Mali the Captain, and I hope you all have a very nice day. I'm out. Peace. Bye.